ladies and gentlemen. My name is Karl Dietrich, and I've traveled parts of the world at holy sites examining them for Earth energy. My real interest is in astronomy, but with your indulgence, I'd like to start with the topic of worldview. Now, worldview is one of the most dangerous topics you could embark on, because if you think how you react to the world, it's like a big purse. It's got your prejudice in it, it's got your religion in it, it's got your politics in it, and your worldview is full of all these discordant things. And if you really had to examine it, you'd be appalled. They don't really meld up, they don't mesh up. Astronomy, I first studied philosophy, and astronomy was the vehicle for making your worldview mesh up to a certain extent. It's not absolutely ironclad, but for the most part, it's a beautiful, beautiful philosophy. Now, one of the main worldviews today, and this is, propagated by politicians who certainly have charge of the academia, is that, everything started with Adam and Eve, and it just progressed along to where we are now. Things are always getting better, and if you challenge people on that, what they'll say is, well, obviously there's a few checks, and so we have to take a step back for two forward, and then three forward and two back and stuff like that. But that's just not true. It really isn't true, because if you look at the cultural history of the people that have lived on this planet, it's all about destruction. We were on this island, and there was an earthquake, and our island sank into the sea, and a couple of us survived. Or we were there, and a tsunami hit us, wiped out everything, and a couple of us survived. Or a volcano spewed down on top of us, and a few of us survived. So, and if you look at the Chaldean cosmology, the earth has been destroyed by fire and destroyed by flood. If you look at the Hopi, they're even more advanced than the Vedic and the Chaldean, because they actually have a true picture of destruction in the earth, and it's elemental. Everything that we know, everything that we perceive, goes in cycles, and they're very basic cycles. It's moist, hot, dry, and cold. If you look at the day, you have the dew on the ground in the morning. That's moisture. Then you have the heat of the day. Then in the afternoon it gets dry, and at night it gets very cold before morning. If you look at the month, the phases of the moon, they follow that cycle as well. From new moon to first quarter, it's moist, usually, statistically, typically. From first quarter to full moon, it's hot. From full moon to last quarter, it's dry, and it's very cold in the last phase of the moon. The same with the seasons. Spring is moist, summer is hot, autumn is dry, winter is cold. So the Hopi actually put this into their cosmology, and their world is destroyed 4 times by this cycle of elements. It's destroyed by water, fire, drought, and ice. And that's kind of phenomenal to me, because you think the Hopi, well, they're just Native Americans, they couldn't be as smart as these Vedic guys or Egyptians. So anyway, that's kind of the introduction to this. Now, Hesiod, the Greek fellow, he kind of put it in a nutshell. He said, the way the world works is you have first it's chaos. And then chaos begets darkness and night. And darkness and night combine together, and they produce the day. And that's the same thing in the book of Moses. God separates the night from the darkness. So what I'm trying to say with all this complicated introduction is that astronomy is really at the crux and the basis of everything. All the little illusions that I just said, they're astronomically based. Okay? So let's just try to think our way into our own culture and say that our civilization has been destroyed. How are we going to build it up again? What are we going to do? So usually there's some A-type personality, and they'll step forward and they'll say, well, I know a little bit about astronomy. What we really need, we need to organize time. Because if we're going to plant crops or go hunting or go fishing, we need to know what time of the year it is, you know, with the season. We don't want to, and we need to be able to store food. We need to recognize, make up a lot of food and store it for the winter. We need to have that. So what this guy does, he thinks to himself, or a lady, I'm sure it's a lady in my case anyway. So this man or woman goes out and they find a nice kind of a grassy knoll, and they put up a pole. They put a pole in the middle of it, and they're going to watch the sun over the course of the year. They said that's the only way we can make a start at this. So first of all, you know, he'll put the pole here, and as the sun moves down toward the winter solstice, she sees that that's as far as the sun is going to go. And she'll leave the pole there. And the sighting pole, the back sight is here. And then she'll watch the sun over the course of the year, and kind of, it's very hard to estimate the equinoxes, but she'll finally get to the point of the summer solstice. So when that summer solstice finally comes and the sun doesn't set any further north, that's where the other pole will go. And all of a sudden, you have an observatory, and a wonderful observatory, because it does just countless things for you. Number one, as I said, it organizes the time, but what it gives you is festivals. You know, you don't want to just live, you want to have some fun too. So the winter solstice is one of your big religious festivals, and the equinox is one of your big religious festivals, and the summer solstice is. And we still have that today. If you're a Christian, you know, your prophet and God was born in the winter solstice, and he was, you know, sacrificed on the equinox. And the Easter is the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. If you're Jewish, your New Year begins at the autumn equinox on Rosh Hashanah. And Rosh Hashanah, I might be wrong in this, but last time I read, it's the first new moon after the autumn equinox. Okay? So everything has been destroyed in your civilization, but now you have a calendar and you've got these religious festivals, things are starting to look up a little bit. Between the solstices and the equinox, they further divided it into 8 other festivals. These are called the cross-quarter days. They're just halfway between. And these are the really, really fun festivals because they're social festivals. They're not religious ones. They're for having fairs. Fairs where you can trade and barter and sell, where you can hire servants, where you can negotiate your leases for land, where you have courts of judgment, where you have dances and games and all kinds of stuff like that. So now, not only do you have a religious organization of life, but you have a social organization of life too. And the government meets during those things, you know, to make major decisions and so forth. So, astronomy achieves order in time. And I'll tell you later how dowsing fits in with all this. Once you've established the equinoxes, if you do it right, and you have to check it over a number of years to make sure your sight lines are perfect and they match up, but equinox will always give you dead east and west. So it'll give you a survey line for any kind of survey that you want to perform on land. Usually what happens is after one of these catastrophes, and of course I'm making this up, but one of the people in your community of survivors stumbles across an old temple. I say, here's a temple, okay, look, this will be our church and this is where we'll honor God or the universe, the universal mind or whatever. So the astronomer, girl or man, goes over and says, this is wonderful, okay, because your temple has been aligned from ancient times to the east and to the west. So I know this is the right temple, and and we can build on this. And the east-west is going to be our baseline for our civilization. So then they further, off this baseline around the temple, they survey the beginning of civilization, where you have houses and where you have plots of land and where you have businesses. And the reason that's so important is because if you can survey land, you can determine ownership. And if you can determine ownership, you give people a motive for making money and staying in one place. You know, hey, that's my place, it's surveyed, okay? So whatever money I make going out pirating and robbing people, I can bring that home and I can keep it safe, you know, in my house. And it's a wonderful tool for government too, because they can assess property taxes on what you own. And it's probably one of the few just taxes in the world, because the state is maintaining the rights of your property and your tax number. So they get some money in to use for their government purposes. And the churches as well, and the synagogues, they get money for that too, because they assess you. They say, hey, here's our tithe. You live there, okay, give me some money and we'll keep our religion going. Well, you laugh at it, but that's actually what happened. You know, that is the glue that makes our civilization work and what makes this new civilization work. So, what has astronomy done? It's defined time, and now it's defined space, and it's, you know, surveyed the new land that you're going to be working on. And as I just said, it, in a way, has given you an approximation of God, because you have a place now where you can worship the deity, whether it's the mind or, you know, Daawa, you know, from the Indian, from the native people. That temple is very important because it gives you a place you can focus your attention outside of yourself, you know, which we all need to do. We all need to do this. You know, we get so involved in our little stupid lives. So this, well, it's true. So this temple thing is mightily important. So that's another benefit which astronomy has given you. And then, lastly, astronomy, when I say defines, I'm really saying organizes. You know, you need organization, you need order in your universe. You've just suffered this outrageous collapse of everything. And you're just crying out for order. I want my life to be safe. I want it to be comfortable. I want it to be organized. I want to know who is pulling the strings, you know, in my life. So, you know, astronomy takes care of all that. Then finally, astronomy orders who we are. And I think that these are really some of the nicest sayings of all time. And one of them is from the Oracle of Delphi, and the pronouncement is, know thyself, and you will know God and the universe. It's a wonderful saying. And then I think the one by Heraclitus is, man is the measure of all things. And we get into that. That's kind of powerful. And again, too, like in the books of Moses, the Elohim, they say to one another, let us make man in our image. So this is all getting to the point where we are a little microcosm of the great universe. And I'll give you one of the real powerful remarks here, and it's by Anaxagoras, and he was 500 BC. And I don't know where the hell he got this, because he's living in a little colony there, you know, in Ionia in Asia Minor. He's not connected with the Egyptians. He's not really connected with the Chaldeans. He just comes up with this, you know, all by himself, and he says, for in everything there is a portion of everything. Nous is infinite. Nous is mind. That's just the Greek word for mind. The individual mind stems from the cosmic mind. And isn't that exactly what dowsing is about? It's based on the premises that we participate in the cosmic mind. We are important. And, you know, if you think about that too, doesn't that give you a law? If we all participate in cosmic mind, we are all equally of value. And we can't now go to someone and discredit another person. We have to give them every benefit of the doubt because they share in this cosmic mind. And we are, in a true sense, we are holy beings. Once you make this connection and you believe what Anaxagoras is telling us, you're obliged to act in a certain way. And this great cosmic law that links us to the universe becomes a moral law. And I think that that's quite beautiful if you can make that jump. Moving on a bit, why are we the measure of everything? The reason is that one of the great geometers, when they were first after, again, everything's crushed and destroyed, and they're inventing geometry again. And one of the people, they stick a staff in the ground connected to a bit of rope, and that has another staff, and they swing it around. This has a loop on it, and they swing it around, and they make a beautiful circle. And they're delighted with that. That's great. Okay, look at that. Look at my circle. Then they'll keep when they made the circle, they'll keep that staff steady, take the one in the middle, and mark off arcs on the circle. And it turns out that one of the fundamentals of a circle is that the radius, where you just made the circle with, that will cut off 6 perfect arcs on the circumference of the circle. So a circle, the nature of a circle is really based in the number 6. It's fundamental to it. Now, I'm sure you've all, they've killed this image, by Da Vinci of the Vitruvian Man. And he's called the Vitruvian Man because Vitruvius was a Roman architect, and he got this from Egypt, and the Egyptians got it from other people. This has been in culture forever and ever, and you can't assign it to anybody. And as you see there, Da Vinci, he's put a box, a square around the man. And one of the reasons for that is that if you want to divide a person in half, it's the half line is the groin. Down from the groin is half your person, the other half is up here. And you can cut that into 4 segments and so forth. The other part, you see he's drawn a circle around this man here. Now what's that all about? The circle, the focus of the circle is not from the groin area, it's from your navel. And traditionally, in a good human shape, your navel is a golden mean proportion to the top of your head. Now what do I mean by that? The golden mean is 0.618 of 1. And it's a very magical proportion, and humans have used it in art and architecture, and nature uses it to build stuff. It's a very workable proportion, and where it comes from is, let's say I'm making the world, and I find something. Whatever length or size it is, if I cut it in this golden mean proportion, where this length is to this length, the same way this length is to the entire length, that's the golden mean proportion. And it just works somehow, and it doesn't matter how long a thing or short it is. I'm going to take it, I'm going to cut it here. This is to that as that is to the whole length. It's a miracle. And now, most people, if you go home and measure yourself, well, I'm not quite the golden mean proportion. Well, no, you're not going to be. We're all different. We're somewhere between, 6.0 and 6.25, when it should be 618 would be the perfect Barbie or whatever you want to call it. But the point is, he's drawn this circle around the navel. And you'll notice, if you create a pentagon on this, what it does is one of the bars of the pentagon, and then you have a pentagram in the middle of it, is right where your arms reach, like this. Now, if you further analyze the figure, as we just said, complicatedly, that a circle is what? It's 6. It's based on 6. So now, what people have done since ancient times is they've divided from the tip of your fingers to your elbow, that's a cubit. And they've divided that into 3 sixes. And 3 sixes and 3 sixes is 36 here, and 36 happens to be, you know, what a circle is, 360 degrees. Okay? So in total, you know, you're 72 of these, let's just call them proportional inches, is your span and it's your height. It's 72. Now if you look at the other handout I gave you, and it's just a list of the number 72, you can look at it later if you know, feel up to it. This is in all of culture, all of human culture. 72 disciples of Confucius, 72 conspirators against Osiris, you know, even in Viking things, you know, 72, you know, guardians of Valhalla. You know, why is all this in everybody's culture? Because it came from astronomy. It came from this sixness. And I don't mean you have to be 6 feet tall. I'm just saying the human body has this proportion of 6 built into it. And what does that mean? We go to astronomy. So the astronomers, the first thing that they thought was just wonderful was that when they started watching the planets, they noticed that Saturn, or rather Jupiter, goes around the sun in 12 years. They noticed that Saturn goes around the sun in 30 years. So 12 times 30 happens to be 360, and which is kind of close to the number of days in a year. So they thought, okay, let's base the circle, or the degrees in a circle, on this magic number 6. And let's use 360 for the degrees in a circle. Because that works with the sixness of it, and Saturn and Jupiter do it, and so forth, and so on. Now, when Saturn and Jupiter, they will meet each other, you know, one's going at 12 years, the other's going at 30 years, so Jupiter's overtaken them, and they meet every 20 years in the sky. And when they meet, these 20 years, if you put that on a circle, it'll give you a 6-pointed star. Right? And what's really curious is that if you watch the movements of Mercury in the sky, what it'll do, it'll have a greatest eastern elongation and the greatest western elongation in relation to the sun. It'll have a conjunction with the sun. When it's behind the sun, it's moving around in front of the sun. So if you track that, if you're an astronomer and just, you know, watch, oh, okay, he's in Aquarius, now I put it, you know, I mark it on my little sand tablet. Mercury makes this 6-pointed star the same way the conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn make a triangle. If you include their oppositions, it'll make another triangle, which is an exact 6-pointed star. Now this is a lot of order in the universe for somebody who's craving for order, which we do, you know. And you can look at a lot of these figures, and you know they're off by a couple of degrees and so like that. But over the long term, they're very true. Now let me just skip down to some of the Mayan system. And then I'll do a quick thing on dowsing when we're done. Yes?
Just wondering, why didn't they make a year 360 days?
Because it doesn't work out to that. Because I think, in principle, when we go around the sun, we do in 360 days. But what's the sun doing? The sun isn't sitting there. The sun is moving through our galaxy. Our galaxy is spinning, rotating, and it's moving through the universe. So that's why none of these numbers work out to a T. Because you don't have just one thing going around another. You have that thing moving. You have your galaxy moving. Yeah, it's a mess. I don't know how they ordered all this. It was so darn confusing. It's amazing that we're that smart. And then you'll notice, like in a lot of literature that you read, people will say, oh, well, angels told us this, and messengers. Well, that's what the Chaldeans called the planets. They called them angels, messengers. So if somebody says, this is alien information, it's otherworldly, well, the old people, yeah, they said it was. The stars and the planets taught us that because we listened. And I know dowsers can better understand that because we do have that concept of being on an equal plane with the cosmic mind. So why shouldn't we know that? Because if the cosmic mind built it that way, we participate in that, okay. And we say that the angels taught it to us. Or extraterrestrials in some swamp down in Okeechobee. Anyway, so one of the most beautiful systems of astronomy is what the Mayan developed. And when we first started looking at the Mayan system, they were astonished how absolutely accurate they were. They were as accurate as an atomic clock nowadays. And the reason they had that accuracy is because they didn't trust just one cycle. They had at least 3 cycles, 3 basic cycles, and but about 5 or 10 on top of that. Now, I'm going to read this now because I'm running out of steam and I'm tired. But it's worthwhile. The Mayan system, okay, I know, this is getting too confusing. The Mayans' greatest love was for the planet Venus. And again, the planet Venus has a particular relationship with the Earth. And it's called the 5-8-13 relationship, which is a Fibonacci number. It's in the Fibonacci series. And what that means is the planet Venus, I was telling you about Jupiter and Saturn drawing these triangles and then 6-sided things, and Mercury does that. Venus does the opposite. Venus makes a 5-pointed star in the sky. And when I say that, this is what I mean. When Venus is in conjunction with the sun, that'll be 1 point, which an astrologer will mark on his little circle. And then when she's at greatest, each conjunction or each greatest eastern elongation or each greatest western elongation, if you just track those during the course of the year, no, not during the course of the year, Venus will make a 5-pointed star, perfect 5-pointed star. That's in 8 Earth years. We have to wait for 8 Earth years for Venus to accomplish this 5-pointed star. And those turn out to be 13 of Venus's years. So how odd is that? That's right in the Fibonacci series, which begins 1, 1, and you add 1 and 1, you get 2. Then you go back and you add 2 and 1, you get 3. Then you add 3 and 2, you get 5. Then you add 5 and 3, and you get 8. And it just like that. And the Fibonacci series is something just like the golden mean proportion. Nature uses it all the time. And you'll see so many 5-leaf flowers, and we have 5 fingers and 5 toes and 5 whatever. Anyway, so the Mayans just fell in love with the planet Venus, and they just studied everything about it. And as I said, Venus makes this 5-pointed star in 13 of her years. So the Mayans said, okay, great. Let's use, instead of the number 6, we're going to use the number 13. The whole system's going to be based on 13. And so this is how it works. After the 13, what you do is you add, they call this duplication or duplissimo or some funny term like that. But it's adding the number to itself. So if you add 13, 13, you get 26. Now, 26 is really important to the Maya because what it does is the human period of gestation is about 260 days, 9 months. So right away you have this magic 13 and 13, the 26, you have it sitting there. It's part of nature. Women are having babies every 260 days. it's also a great tool for the astrologer, because if you want to find out about somebody's personality, you better find out when they were conceived, you know, because that's what they're really like. So they could backtrack to 260 days. The 260 days was key to the Maya because it was the maturation date of their mountain corn. And this was not this genetically engineered garbage they have nowadays. This was good, healthy mountain corn, and it took 260 days to mature, just like a human child. And that's why a lot of the Middle American and South American cultures say, we are the people of the corn. That's what they call themselves, because corn is magic. And that fits in with this cycle. And again, in 260 years, you have 20 conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn, or I beg your pardon. In 260 years, the 20-year conjunctions of Saturn and Jupiter happened 13 times. Who would have thought that? And all kinds of other stuff happened too. And in the 26,000 years, that's their notion of the precession of the vernal equinoxes. Now, in the Vedic system, in the sixth system, the precession takes 25,920 years, because that's just the way their sixth system works. But the Maya, they said, well, we don't want all these funny numbers. We just want 26,000 years. And it's actually probably more correct than the Vedic system, because like I said, principally things work in round numbers. But because there's all these different motions involved, the numbers get scattered around. Okay. Now, this 26,000 year period, some people are making a ton of money off this Mayan end date thing. You know, like in December, the world's going to come to an end. And I don't think so, because the world is in such a mess, it can't come to an end. It just can't. It's too messy. Okay? Nobody would allow it. Who'd clean up that mess? The reason they pulled this date, this 2012, was because this cycle began somewhere around 3,300 before BC. And a fifth of it completes around 2012. They're actually still arguing about this first date, the 3,300 years. And a fifth of the cycle stops 2012. Why a fifth? Because of the Venus thing, the 5, 8, 13 number. It's just part of their calendar coordination, all right? They have a regular calendar of 365 days, then they have the Tzolk'in calendar of the 260 days. They're intermeshing and intertwining. And then you have the cycle of the Pleiades, which is really the precession. And that's another cycle. So they combine all these cycles to keep an absolutely accurate account of time. Okay, now I'm going to stop there because I can see people yawning. But I want to get into a little bit of dowsing here. Now, I've traveled in many parts of the world. I was very fortunate. And we, instead of lying out on the beach, we went through jungles and stuff and visit holy sites. Every holy site, I'd check out, you know, what kind of earth energies were there. And like we went to Tikal, and you just walk into it and you go, bong, you know, it just, you know, your cares would just drop off your shoulders. And then I asked some other people there, I said, you know, a pretty nice place, isn't it? You know, they say, yeah, and they kind of look quizzically, you know. I said, do you feel real relieved and comfortable? Yeah, we do. Okay. So, you know, that's part of this thing about the temple. The temple is magic because it's aligned a certain way, and it does have these properties where if somebody speaks, they speak really better at the temple because they're using the energy which is underneath them, you know. And sometimes it's a great way for controlling politicians. You know, then they can't lie. But Washington D.C. has disproved this. No, they really have, and I'm not joking at all, because Washington D.C. Anybody who reads a lot is founded on an ancient Native American site. The hill, as it's called, was this holy site of the Native Americans. It was Jenkins Hill, but the Native American people used it. And what I've discovered with this earth energy stuff, to make it really work, like in places like Bruna Boyne and Newgrange or in Jerusalem, to really make it work, you have to have underground cavities, fissures, fault lines, and aquifers. I've tested it for water, for gases, for stuff. You can have all kinds of things. These are conductors underneath the ground. To make a real holy site, these conductors or fault lines, they are also lined up astronomically. So when the sun hits the fault line and you have the flow of this cosmic energy, it just goes nuts. It goes nuts. They say that the old temple in Jerusalem was like that they actually kind of made an acoustical chamber in the holy place, you know, with fabric, and that when, you know, during the equinox, when the sun activated, because underneath the Temple Mount, it's all full of chambers and aquifers and sewers, and it's riddled, it's like Swiss cheese. So when this cosmic energy hits it, on the right day, using those channels, they said that the sound produced was like the roaring of the ocean. And occasionally it would go boom! You know, so that's the thing with these holy places. They are special because they're energy accumulators. And they're energy accumulators for good. They should be. And that's the trouble with Washington, D.C. That's an energy accumulator. Pennsylvania Avenue is right down the winter solstice line. Whatever's underneath there, subterranean-wise, is being conducted right under Pennsylvania Avenue. And I forget the one to the summer solstice, but it's a genuine, powerful site. I don't know what they're doing. They must be working for the devil. Not to be really inspired by this. It's phenomenal. I'm going to finish up now. But think about it for a minute. Think about this for a minute. What I'm saying is that these holy sites, they have to have a fault line or a cavity or an aquifer conducting the cosmic energy. And they also have to be aligned astronomically, like Newgrange is. You know, right in Newgrange where the winter solstice, the sun just comes into the tumulus. Mm-hmm. But I was out there dowsing the thing, and the line along which this beam of the sun travels is right on top of one of these fault lines. And it's even marked out in the field by standing stones and other tumulus and stuff like that. Think about this for a minute. We're living in an area where the Silicon Valley is producing all these outrageous, novel ideas and inventions and technology which are changing our world. Why is that happening? Because of the San Andreas Fault. This thing is accumulating energy, and I've gone to the lakes there, Crystal Springs, you know, where the water supply comes from. You can walk right in on top of the fault, and I've tested it, and whoa, I mean, the vibrations you get there, they knock you on your backside. So that's my theory, and you can believe it if you like, or you cannot. Anyway, thank you very much for your attention, and I will now entertain questions if you have any. Yes, ma'am.
I just wondered if you could restate that last thing about the San Andreas Fault.
All right, like I was trying to say about these.
Tom, can you repeat the questions?
Oh yes.
What was the question?
Oh, what was the question?
Could you repeat the last thing you said about the San Andreas Fault? You said it's accumulating energy, and anything you said about the San Andreas Fault.
Okay, well, before I was trying to make the point what a holy site is. Mm-hmm. And a holy site has to be like Delphi or whatever. There's chasms there and water coming in and steam, you know, vapors and stuff like that. You need to have the fault lines or the chasms to make this holy energy work. You also need to have it astronomically aligned to get a really powerful effect. And what I'm just suggesting, this is just based on my stupid idea, that the reason there is so much invention in Silicon Valley. It's right on top of the San Andreas Fault. I find that a really odd coincidence. I'm not saying it's a holy site or anything, but the reason that people have always gravitated to these places is because, just like the Dowsers, they would check out a place for, you know, negativity or comfort, and so I don't want to live in some evil place. And the Dowsers would go there, they'd check out the energy and make sure everything was fine. That's how we got started on celebrating these holy places. They're holy because they make you feel good, and they make you tell the truth, and, you know, everything is hunky-dory. That kind of makes sense. Anybody else have questions? Yes, ma'am.
What did you say about Washington, D.C. and what runs under Pennsylvania Avenue? What did you say?
All right, like I said, this was an Indian holy place, Jenkins Hill, what we call nowadays
Tom,
the Hill.
can you repeat the question
Oh, sorry.
about DC?
Okay, my mind is so messed up
That's okay.
that if I was trying to answer the question, I forgot what the question was.
Washington?
Oh, why is Washington
Like,
D.C.?
what is the energy there good for? Is it good for our...
It's supposed to be, and maybe it will be. I'm sure it will be. We all live in hope. Anyway. This is the point with Jenkins Hill. Now, I haven't diagnosed that place. I haven't been there. I hope to go there someday and very soon. But they say that the track lines leading up to Jenkins Hill were exactly where they planted, you know, Pennsylvania Avenue, and the other one in the north is, you know, the one in the middle is Capitol Avenue. That's right on the equinox, you know, where the sun rises at the equinox. Pennsylvania is the winter solstice. And then there's another avenue up here. They say when they first surveyed Washington, D.C., that these lines, where there are now streets, the Indians had used those as track lines. Why were they using those as track lines? Why do animals follow track lines? Because they feel good. We have 2 oak trees growing in our front yard, and they're massive, and they came up like overnight. It was like Jack and the Beanstalk. And I remember living in Ireland, and we had an awful thunderstorm, and I looked down in the field, and here were about 8 heavyweight bullocks, and then with their legs up, they got hit by lightning. They were taking shelter under this oak tree. And I said, whoa, that's amazing, that's absolutely amazing. And I knew at that point that oak trees like to grow over, you know, water spirals and these energy points. So then I'm looking at my oak trees here in San Bruno, and I'm wondering, they're just blowing out of the ground. I mean, they're this big after a couple of years. And I said, well, you know, there must be energy there. And then, you know, I went out and checked this, and they're on 2 energy nodes. And then I saw the darn squirrel that we have. And where is he hiding the nuts for the winter? He's hiding them on these energy nodes. That's how he remembers where his stash is.
That makes sense.
Okay? Now, I mean, that's pretty weird. Does that kind of answer your question? But these were already Indian track lines. They'd already worn in the ground, they were paths, and we just put streets on top of them. And they led right to the hill.
So it's a powerful place.
It was designed to be very powerful. And look, don't get me wrong, I'm making a bit of fun of the government. You know,
You should.
it will work. It will work. Are there any other questions, please? Yes?
Have you correlated with the Hopi prophecies about causes of destruction with any particular events?
Yes, yes, I have. And the question was, have I have I correlated the Hopi cosmology with any forthcoming events, or?
Well, you can answer it any way you want. If there's going to be another disaster, you mentioned that the elements correlate with disasters in the Hopi
Yes,
worldview. Have you figured out what disaster they're referring to for each element?
Yes,
And
yeah.
what's coming for us?
Well, you know what? Let me be frank with you. These major disasters, like, let's say, the Noah flood,
Right.
they happen, the Noah flood took place in Capricorn, and not Capricorn the way we think of it, the precession of the vernal equinoxes or the year and stuff like that. If you correlate what the Milky Way does, the Milky Way spins around and it also zooming through the universe. And it's heading somewhere, and I'll get into that. But if you were to take this zodiac pattern and jump it over to what the Milky Way galaxy does, and the Chaldeans have told us this, that the Noah flood happened in Capricorn. Now, in order to get through Capricorn, 30 degrees of Capricorn in the Milky Way cycle takes 18 million years. So we got nothing to worry about. It's just nice to know because it's one of the things that fits in with this cosmic order. And it makes me feel good that nothing's going to happen for about 18 million years. You know, I mean...
So you're saying that Chaldeans know about a flood that was 18 million years ago?
Hell yes. Why are we amazed at that? Any of these ancient peoples, whether they're Maya or Egyptians, they think in millions of years. They laugh at us. They say, oh, these, you know, I mean, if they were here now, they'd say, oh, these idiots. Everything's so, you know, oh, everything's going to happen this December. It's not.
So what is in store for us?
Nothing.
Okay.
Get up every morning, enjoy your life. Make coffee and get good coffee.
So there's no major disaster for millions of years?
Well, no, there's a lot of little stuff. You just saw what happened in Katrina, you saw what happened in Japan,
Yeah.
and that reinforces the idea that we're always being knocked out to a certain degree.
Right.
But I mean, occasionally, these, you know, the death by fire and the death. I mean, in the big flood, a lot of people survived. They were living on top of the mountains. It didn't really cover the mountains. There are always some survivors. We're the survivors. That's what the Hopi thing is about. They're actually telling you, and this is really amazing, they're telling you that our people, you know, and they came from the Anasazi and all this stuff, our people, we went through all this. They're saying we survived 216 million years of disasters and misery. And that's why we wound up on the Colorado Plateau. Next question.
So where is the Milky Way heading?
Yeah.
Where's the Milky Way heading? As far as I remember, I can't remember all this stuff. It's heading toward some other, it's called the Great Attractor. And the direction of it is somewhere in Virgo. The direction of it. And we have a whole lot of galaxies, part of it, and clusters, heading in that direction. But that doesn't mean that we're going to get there because, you know, things twist and spin and jive and stuff like that. But what's really amazing, now I had the good fortune to go down to Peru and Bolivia 3 times, you know, because of the astronomical and holy sites there. They're incredible. And I was able to meet with this Carlos Villela. And he's been writing on astronomical sites and holy sites there all his life. He's an architect. And they're more sophisticated than we are. You know, they know stuff, and I've read, you know, Mayan accounts by experts. They're very sophisticated people. One of the things that the South American people believe, they believe that Quetzalcoatl and his kind of anti-person, I can't even think of his name right now, but that they created the universe by arguing with each other. No, really. And if you think about it, how does the cosmic mind, how does it perform? How does it get things done? It gets it done through logos, through the word, through speech. And these people, these idiot South Americans and Central Americans, they knew all that. You know, I mean, that's part of their fundamental cosmology. That's a very sophisticated idea. You know, to say that they did this by arguing and all of a sudden mountains rose up, all kinds of stuff like that. And we have that too in the Bible. It's a beautiful passage. I'll just kind of summarize it. And it's from the prophet Isaiah, and he says, this is God speaking, and he says, you know, as the rain falls down to the ground, or the snow falls down to the ground, so does my word go forth. and it accomplishes what I have set it out to accomplish, and it is better for that. So we have that like in our, Jewish, Catholic, Christian religion. We have that idea too, that God's word is created. But don't be above any other culture or any other race and think that we are superior to other people. We're not. These people have these identical thoughts that we smart Americans have. So thank you for your indulgence.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
Two parts. How do you correlate Stonehenge into all of this? And back down to South America, the Nazca lines.
Yes.
Is there any energy fields and so forth? What kind of
Oh, yes.
energy did you get from the Nazca lines?
Huge energy. The question was, what kind of energy fields are the Nazca lines, or any kind of correlation between that sort of archaeology and Stonehenge? All right, I'm not going to answer your question. I'm going to avoid it in this way. But it'll answer your question, I hope. Actually, down there, the Nazca lines seem to be, they're actually tracking the movement of the Milky Way. Like I said, if Milky Way is only moving 30 degrees in 18 million years, that's an awful lot of weird tracking going on. They say, some researchers have looked there, and they say that the Nazca lines are a series of pages, and that as the Milky Way moved, they've eradicated the page and done new markings over it. I don't know if you can believe that, but that's one of the things. But what I did see down there, I saw a whole hillside which was made in the shape of the Milky Way. And we don't know anything about the Milky Way because there's so much damn light around all the time. You only know about the Milky Way if you go camping, where there's no light. But it's startling. And in South America, in the mountains, they've made an image of the Milky Way. They've punched holes into the ground going up the mountain. A whole image. And if you go there, there's actually like a stream of water flowing through some of the holes, and you can look, you can look in and see the stars.
Wow.
And this South American guy, this Villanueva, he told me that, they're saying, how did they lay out the Nazca line? How the hell did they do it? And he said, real simple. They had a bowl of water and a load of astronomers, and they're walking around, and they're going, oh, I've got Sirius, I've got Sirius, the star Sirius, in my bowl. And then the other astronomer, he'd shout from over there, oh, I've got Aldebaran, in my bowl. And so then they'd mark it. And believe it or not, that would make a correct image of what's happened in the sky down on the Earth.
For goodness
Well,
sake.
when they say they've got Sirius, you mean they can't see
No, they're
it?
just walking
Oh,
along.
yeah, they can't see the
They
planet.
can't see it. Well, I mean, they're kind of aiming it like.
No, but you can't see it with your naked eye. with
Serious?
your Naked eye.
Yes, you can.
Sirius,
Yeah,
okay.
that's right. I think it is the number one bright star.
They just made up the animals after they aligned the stars to, tell a story.
Made up the animals. The
For
question
Nazca
was,
lines, like the hummingbird and all the animals.
well, they're actually then geometrical shapes too. They represent numbers and geometry and stuff like that.
Oh, it's a code?
It is. It's code, and I really
Ah.
I couldn't even begin to give you an
Uh-huh.
understanding of. But it's very, very complex. I hope they never ruined the thing.
Yeah.
And Stonehenge, how does that work in?
How does Stonehenge work
Yeah.
in what? In what way?
Well, is it the same type of thing, or you think that was laid out astronomically as
Oh,
well?
of course, of course. The question was regarding Stonehenge. Now, before they had the stones there, it was just kind of a tumulus, just earthworks. And like we started the lecture, the guy drives a stake in the ground, in this tumulus. He's got a sighting stake in the middle of it, and he's watching the sun. See? That's what they were doing there at Stonehenge before the stones were there. It was a henge. A henge is a circle, just an earth circle. What they discovered then were these Aubrey holes. Have you heard of them? Well, okay, they're digging around, the big stones, and they find there were posts here, 56 posts around, 56. Yeah, I think 56. And that's how they built up their calendar. I mean, the first calendar, the first calendar that anybody ever made, they used 28 holes. 2 times 28 is 56. They just made it bigger. And what does 28 mean? 28 times 13 is 360, is it? Real quick. Good. Isn't it? Who's shaking their head? 28 times 13? 28 times 13.
364.
Huh?
364.
Hey, right answer. All right, you go to the head of the class. It is 364.
364 answers.
Yeah. Okay, so what does that give you a chance to do with these 26 holes? It almost makes a year. Now, since the moon moves 13 degrees every night, on average, statistically, typically, you can move the moonstone in the 26 holes, you move it one space. And then you move the sunstone every 13 days. You move this. I forget what it is. You can look it up. But that's the key with Stonehenge. It was an observatory. The Aubrey holes prove it. It's one of the most basic original calendrical forms that you could build out in nature.
One more.
Another question?
One more question.
You're wearing me out.
Have you read the Urantia book?
The who?
Urantia book. Have you read the Urantia book?
I haven't.
It's a fascinating read. You might want to go there.
I'll try, but
What's your comment?
I'm getting old. I can't.
What's your comment about
Urantia
Urantia
book.
I know the book you're speaking of. What's your comments on it?
I think that a lot of what he's talking about is reflected in that book. Would you not agree with that?
Not much more.
I think hugely so.
You've heard all this before?
Oh, I've been studying it for 3 years, and I barely scratched the surface.
Oh, okay. Well, was the lecture all right?
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
fantastic.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate
One
it.
more.
Yeah, sure.
You have a feature here, the New Madrid earthquake, December 16th, 1811.
Yes, I've been studying earthquakes since I don't know, since about 16. And I've actually gone to the USGS with my findings, which are 1,000-fold. And I've actually gone to like the venture capitalists, about tracking this stuff. The venture capitalists said, how would you make money off of that? And the USGS said, no, we're going to go with sensors anyway. So,
How accurate were you, though, in your assessments? How accurate were you?
oh, dead on, dead on. If you look at the thing, did I
Oh,
put a copy in my handout?
Yes, you did. That's
Okay, if you
what
look
I
at
was
it, I mean, it's,
What
you
does it
see,
mean though?
what does it mean?
Yes.
I don't know, but anyway.
Oh, come on.
Let me borrow this, but thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so what does it mean? On December the 16th, 1811, an earthquake hit in New Madrid, Missouri, and it was so powerful it altered the course of the Mississippi River.
For 3 days, it went upstream.
Amen to that, and it formed Real Foot Lake afterwards.
And church bells rang.
In Boston.
And everybody in the town of New Madrid died.
Did they?
He did. There were no survivors.
No.
So if you'll notice one thing, and this is the way I do scientific astrology, and the trouble with the stuff in the newspaper is it's all based on that the sign of Aries doesn't move with the precession of the vernal equinoxes. Of course it moves.
Of course.
I mean, you go out there at night and you look, oh, my planet's in Taurus, and no, it ain't. It's in Gemini, you idiot. So, they've just scalped the dog out of astrology. But you can go to sites like ephemeridus.com, And they'll give you the astrology, and they'll give you the right ascension as well, the correct scientific right ascension, you know, using Greenwich as a basis. Now, what I do, very simply, I put a little map of the world there, and I've coordinated the map with Greenwich. So if I find an earthquake is happening in New Madrid, I find out what the longitude and latitude of New Madrid is, and I clickety-clock, and I put in like a little globe with, you know, with crosses. That means New Madrid. Now you'll notice on this particular day, we had the sun and a new moon, Mercury, Venus, and Neptune configured right upon the geography. Well, geez almighty, you think the world rocked then. And in addition to that, Jupiter up here was directly in opposition to that, and Mars, the little devil, he was sextile to it. So in order to make any kind of climate, and I'm talking about hurricanes, you know, volcanoes like the one that they in Iceland, in order to make anything happen on the globe, it's the planets making it. And that's a very natural explanation. Like, how does this happen? Why does the Earth crust crack up in different places? Because the planets out there, they're shaking the thing, you know, they're making this happen. What's so hard to believe about that? Because I can show you about 1,000 of these, and this is dramatic because they're all assembled there. You know, any nut can see, oh look, they're all together, you know. Okay? A lot of these things are very complex. You know, the different kind of grip in order to get the leverage. It's all done by leverage. A lot of the different configurations are very complicated. And we might call that a great earthquake, and it wasn't, you know. Yeah, it killed a couple of people because the idiot cities didn't really have a good seismic building code. Or it killed thousands, you know, because they were mud huts. What did you expect? You know, we're not there to assess earthquakes or the power of them. You know, I mean, you could have a real powerful earthquake and nobody was there to see it. Yeah, it's kind of like the tree in the forest. So. Yes?
Do you foresee one coming up?
That's
Your
right.
calculations?
No, I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
I've got all my property in Nevada. You could, and this is the way I sold it to these venture capitalists. You could, and you should have a local earthquake authority and have a crowd of astrologers with good computers saying, at this focus, I'm going to keep track of all the planets, the sun and the moon, on my focus where I live here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And if I see any kind of leverage situation, I'm going to put out a minor alert.
Can you explain that, the leverage thing?
The leverage is geometry. The leverage is like here, they're all together. Well, that's not leverage. They're all, you know, together. The leverage is Jupiter up here and Mars. Jupiter has leverage because he's exactly opposite. Mars has leverage. He's exactly 30 and 30, 60 degrees. That's leverage, baby.
So you must.
Okay. Is that it?
Thank you.
You've run the limit. One more and then we go.
Can you talk about the cathedrals in Europe, you know, and how this relates to the Freemasons? Do you know anything about that?
Yes, I do, but geez, I can't put it all in the one lecture. I cannot. But I'll tell you a quick anecdote, though. I was born in a very ancient town. It's called Fritzlar. It's got a town wall around it and a big cathedral, which doesn't make sense because the town isn't big enough for the cathedral. But I mean, most people who investigate ancient sites, they would know about that stuff. But anyway, the women in this town, they could see into the future. And just like we have, you know, bobbers and, you know, wire rods and stuff like that, they mentally put themselves into this picture. They would go to bed and they would dream that they were looking out of the gable end of their, you know, their timber frame houses, you know, the cute little ones with the timbers outside. And they put themselves in this kind of a trance that they're looking out their window and they see the future. And they predicted stuff, right on the mark. So.
You think the influence of the cathedral?
Oh yes, without a shadow of a doubt. And the reason is, this Fritzlar was the scene of the felling of the Jupiter Dona oak. There was a mighty oak tree sacred to the German god Dona, or Donner, or Thunder, who is the equivalent of Jupiter. And so Saint Bonifacius, with his religious enthusiasm, just got an axe, or he probably hired a few guys, because it was a mighty tree. And he knocked it down. And like I was telling you before about the oak trees they grow on top of these water spirals and stuff like that. This was a magical place. Germans, like druids, German druids. What are
German druids.
They have German druids, I'm telling you. Yes, they do. None of that they assembled at this Dona oak, and that was a big religious place. So he knocks it down, converts them to Christianity, and they built the cathedral right on it. So, and this Fritzlar is built up on a big limestone thing, just like the pyramids or the Rock of Cashel or any of these places, or Tikal for that matter. And it's a holy place, and it's got all these passages.
Where is it now? Is it there now? The cathedral's still there?
Oh yes, it's beautiful.
Where? Where is it?
It's about 100 miles north of Frankfurt, and it's called Fritzlar, Fritzlar, and it means, it's actually, what the name of the place was called Friedeslar, and that means a place of peace, just like Jerusalem, a place of peace. And they don't care about what happened there with politics or fighting and stuff. They're telling you that the locality gives you peace when you visit there. The emanations of peace. And I guess people get jealous and they fight over that.
Were you born in that town?
I'm sorry?
Were you born in that town?
I was born right in that town,
Wow.
right next to the cathedral,
Oh my
because
God.
we lived in that town for over 1,000 years.
That is incredible.
What sign?
Huh?
Under what sign?
March.
No. Not going there. Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're a great audience, I am.